we're going to be talking about urine therapy today. And we're going to talk about our experience with it and whether or not we think it works.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we've been at it now for about probably a little over 2 months, I would think.
Yes.
Feels like it. And so we've been experimenting with urine therapy for various reasons. I was highly influenced by Dr. Amanda Vollmer, who I've heard talk about it for years. I've wanted to do it for years. And then you yourself were introduced to it through other means. And then we came together and decided, well, if we're both wanting to do it, what better time than right now to just jump in?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. Like you said, you've known about it for a while now, and we actually saw Amanda Vollmer speak last year.
Yes.
And she was really kind of hammering home the point of how beneficial drinking your own urine is. And so ever since then, I feel like it's kind of been on my mind. And then, as you mentioned, a couple of months ago, 3 months ago, I got reinterested in it, and I'm like, what are we doing? We should just try it.
Yes.
And so we've been on this little journey here, and I think that it kind of makes sense to treat this show as something of a check-in with our experience, what we've learned so far, things like that, and kind of just make people aware of what we've learned about it. And also coming at it from a skeptical place too, of us not really having, the experience under our belt like some other people. Some people who you've been looking into, they've been drinking their urine for like 30 plus years.
Right. Yes.
40 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's really interesting. So we're just giving it a go.
Yeah. And I mean, so far, the benefits and the positive benefits are through the roof. I mean, it's unavoidable, undisputable evidence that is just coming through on our own personal level that this is one of the best things you can be doing for yourself, one of the most healing things. And the fact of the matter is that it further confirms what I believe, that our bodies are built to heal, and that our bodies produce everything we need in order to be balanced emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And so that to me has been one of the biggest eye openers. And I've had all sorts of thoughts surrounding just that detail alone, which has been really cool to come to.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. Before we get too deep into this,
yeah,
I'm kind of thirsty. I don't know about yourself.
I am too. And, we do have some lemonade, which some of you might be going, oh my God, are they all going to drink their pee on air? But cheers. No,
Cheers, baby.
It's lemonade. Cheers.
Yeah, we thought it would be fitting. So
We figured let's just go with the theme. Oh, that's good. And so.
But yeah, it's a really fascinating topic because just like so many things we found out are incredibly valuable, the real truth behind it has been hidden, and you kind of have to rip off, just layers of, I don't know, almost programming.
Oh, yes.
And layers of information that you thought you knew to get to the gold here. And urine therapy, obviously, the idea of drinking your urine, I remember we have a friend who's been doing it for a while now.
Yeah. Shout out, Miri.
Yeah, and when we first heard about it, it's not like we gravitated towards it immediately and thought, oh my God, that's fantastic, sign me up sort of thing. It took us a little while to kind of get used to the idea that there is something to this. So I think maybe that's actually a good place to start, is kind of the misconceptions or preconceived ideas people have with urine. And obviously one of the things would be that it's just purely waste, which we're finding out that that's not actually the case, right?
Yeah. And also, before we really get into it too, just to remind everybody that we're not experts. We're not experts on this by any means. We've literally only been at it for about 2.5 months. So, you don't have to take our word for it. Do your own research, follow up and all that stuff. But I think what I'm finding and what I've heard multiple other people say in interviews is that just like with anything in life, you're not going to really realize the benefits of this specifically until you do it yourself. I think you could read all the information on it in the world. You could research medical studies, and of which there aren't that many on urine therapy. But you can find them out there. But until you actually do it and take that step, of integrating it into your life, I don't think that you'll really understand it. And I think a lot of people poo-poo it, no pun intended, for the opposite side of what this is about. But, they kind of throw it out and look at it like it's disgusting. Oh my God, I'll never touch you again if you do that, and this and that and the other thing. And it's kind of like, whoa, I mean, look at everything else that's consumed on a daily basis that is far more disgusting than your own urine.
Right.
That's how I'm kind of like looking at it now too.
Well, the thing is, people just don't know.
Exactly. And you don't know what you don't know. That's why I say, if you have never done it, I would say don't judge it till you do it. Mm-hmm. And don't really fully judge it until you have, been able to get to that point.
Right.
Right. And feeling the benefits personally. So that's what I would say.
Right. And I think that it's really symbolic. People's initial reaction, ourselves included, is that it, once again, is just pure waste, that it's dangerous. You shouldn't be doing that. Don't you know what you're doing? Mm-hmm. It's not meant to go back, in your body. And what I'm kind of realizing, and this has kind of just been the journey that we've been on for a while, is that if you just paid attention to mainstream culture and the mainstream education system, as an example, and mainstream media, pretty much the general theme, one of the bigger themes, is that you are dirty. Mm-hmm. You are full of sin. You're disgusting. And only a sterile environment like the hospital or something
right.
is suitable for health, right? And so that's one of the things to me that's very, very interesting, is how we look at ourselves. And so my understanding is that urine therapy was something that was common to certain cultures, especially further back in history, way back when. And this tracks very nicely with some of my understanding about modern man and how modern man has essentially flipped a lot of things. Everything seemingly is kind of inverted in today's world. And so a lot of things that kind of come from within are looked at as being less than or secondary or not accurate or not authentic or something along these lines. And so people are always seeking external validation. They want information from experts outside of themselves, and they want external solutions. And a lot of times the problem is also external as well. And so kind of our trajectory here is really finding solutions from within and things being way more local.
Right.
And so this tracks with what I think some of these cultures were like a long time ago, where their solutions were in their backyard. And what they kind of put up on a pedestal came from someplace very close to them. And so they weren't necessarily concerned with what's happening around the world and how other people, other cultures saw things. I think that a lot of what they were interested in was what was going on in their village, mm-hmm. And I think health, basically, it's going to swing back this way. You can feel it, you can sense it.
Yeah.
But people are realizing that your internal landscape, your relationship with self, your emotions, your history, your psychological perspective, that plays a big, big part in your overall health and well-being. And this gets into a lot of things that you're already interested in, like German New Medicine and things like that.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just interesting to me that a lot of the solutions that we're coming across tend to come from within, spiritual, emotional solutions and things like that. It's like acknowledging what's happening internally and getting right with that stuff before seeking outside sort of help and seeking outside sort of solutions and whatever. So urine therapy, to me, it's just amazing that it's one of these things where it's literally coming from within you, mm-hmm. And it seems like this is really a customized tincture or elixir, if you will, that's meant just for you, right?
Yeah, definitely. And, all the points you make, I second. And one of the things that early on, particularly when our good friend, told us that she started doing it, I know one of my things was, well, what if you're not healthy? What if you're not consuming good things and you're putting just garbage food in? Or obviously, we live in a time where we're being sprayed. There's all sorts of stuff around, this and that and the other. And that would be my argument of like, well, what does that look like then on the other end? But what I'm learning about urine itself is that, your body filters all that stuff out. And it's basically like cleansing it. And what comes out when you go number one is a sterile liquid that's full of stem cells and electrolytes, and there's proteins in there. Your omega-3s that you consume transfer through the urine. There's stem cells. I think I said that already, but it's plasma basically. It's like liquid plasma. You are creating everything you need to heal on the most deepest levels. And that's the thing for me, that it's not so much about being afraid of what you're consuming, although what we've both noticed is since we started the urine therapy, we are way more aware of what we're putting into our body, and we already were. We're already pretty much like very focused on quality of food and making sure we're not going overboard on things. But ever since starting the urine therapy, it's gone to another level, because what we've realized is what you eat, you will taste that. You will taste it the next day when you drink your urine. So if you're having something that's super salty or, whatever it is, like that will come through. And so our logic, and I was speaking for myself, has been like asking myself before I consume something now is like, how is that going to translate over? Am I going to enjoy the flavor or the sensation of that urine tomorrow morning? Or is that going to be something that's going to make me actually like averse to it?
Even if it's like energetically, right?
Even that, yeah, totally. Of just like being more aware, and it's just been really cool to see that come through as part of it.
Right, definitely. No, it builds a sort of new awareness that maybe you didn't have beforehand, and I've noticed that for sure. So that was more so of a thing, I would say, the first few weeks we were doing it, and now it's just kind of in the back of my mind where I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
Still, obviously.
Right.
But I was way more consciously aware of it at the very beginning of, okay, I'm drinking whatever. And I'm like, I'm going to be drinking that tomorrow morning. You know? And so that's kind of been our routine, is drinking it our first wee of the day, pretty much.
Yeah.
Which seems to be like a thing that a lot of people adopt who get into this. And it's interesting, too, as we've basically decided to pursue this journey, there are way more people who are into this than I think we realized. And I think there's way more content and information out there than I think a lot of people would realize as well, right?
Yeah, I agree. And some of the people I have been listening to are talking about, like, there are millions of closet urine drinkers all over the freaking place. And a lot of people don't talk about it because of the taboo. They don't want to have to explain themselves, perhaps. It might be embarrassing. There's a lot of people out there that if you were to tell them this, they might excommunicate you. They may never talk to you again, and that's the risk that you take when you step onto your own path and you listen to, your body and like you really tune in, because you run the risk of people who don't understand turning away or shunning you or whatever. But at the end of the day, something like this where you're literally, we've noticed so many benefits, and I want to run through that so both of us can kind of talk a little bit more about that for the things that we've really like come to find is it's helpful for. But the other thing that comes up a lot too is people thinking about, and I will say too, like if you are on certain pharmaceuticals or you have been for a long time, like these are things that you do need to consider if you are going to start something like this, and do your own research on it. Because I don't know, I'm not a coach in this realm, but what I do know is that you will have to be careful with those things. And also, if you are a person that seems to have a lot of ailments that kind of plague you, or you have chronic conditions for a long time, you may have to start really, really slow and then be healing other parts of your body slowly before you like really, really go into it. That's what I've also been hearing too. And even for us, like starting slow is the way to go. Like that's kind of the best introduction for almost anything, is just to start slow and then increase.
Work your way up.
Work your way up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a little sort of testimony with that too.
Yeah.
And adjusting how much I've been consuming, noticing certain things and whatever. But I think you should go through the benefits, the general benefits of what people say about it. What are the more common things? I guess one of the things too before you start is what we're hearing is there's a wide spectrum of benefits, and some of them we have not noticed ourselves or we haven't pursued ourselves. And then there's even more that we're probably not even aware of.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so it's kind of a big rabbit hole, actually, interestingly enough. But run through, I guess, what most people sort of use it for and what the claims are behind it.
Okay, so, you know, most people, from what I'm hearing, are using it for skin health. They're using it to regulate their hormones. And they're using it for, like, emotional balance and for overall just healing the body is what I think when I really am like thinking about it. And what I'm hearing is that it's like one of those overall healers that I don't know if it's like specific to anything besides the biggest things are what I kind of just said. Yeah. Like the hormone stuff seems to be one of the most beneficial things that come through for people. I can say that for myself. That's one of the first things I noticed was hormonal balance. You know, there's a woman who I'm actually going to be interviewing, and we're going to have a show that's going to be coming out next week. Her name is Megan McDonald, and she is a person that I've learned a lot from, actually. And she has told the story, which I don't want to totally tell because she'll probably want to talk about it herself. But basically her mentor / yoga teacher was the person that turned her onto it. And she was a person that she's now been doing it for 30 plus years, but had major skin healing benefits of just noticing what she was recommended to do was to put a few drops of urine on one of her hands and not on the other hand for like 3 days and see what would happen. And she noticed a huge difference in the skin on the one hand that she was putting it on versus the other hand. And so she kind of then slowly was like, okay. And then she was also using her own teacher as an example of like, well, this woman is in great health. She's vital. She's alert. She's centered. She's calm. You know, and these are the things that you should look at. It's like, that's why living by example is so powerful, because when you come across people who are walking the walk, talking the talk, and they're actually doing the things that they say and they apply it to their life, and then you see it like in real time with them, those are the things that you kind of can't deny. I mean, you can try and deny it, but it's kind of like, well, you know, clearly it's working. Clearly they look pretty amazing. They've got stuff going on. They're present, and that in and of itself can be enough to like make someone just want to try these sorts of things. At least that's been my experience as well. And so those are like kind of some of the main things that I've heard people talk about as to why they would use it. But I mean, like people who I would imagine, you know, if you were going through something like terminal, like if you cancer, major illnesses, I can only imagine that urine therapy would be like a go-to in the alternative healthcare. People with open minds, you know, if you went to a alternative practitioner with an open mind who knew about this.
Right, and not even saying that is going to be the treatment.
Right.
But it can assist.
Right, it would probably be something that you'd want to incorporate. I mean, that would be my recommendation for somebody, you know. But that's just my armchair opinion as well. Because like I said, this isn't my total area of expertise or anything. But just from what I'm gathering and what it feels like to my own body, it would be beneficial.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's almost like it seems as though it's one of these examples, which there's so many out there like this, where the universe truly provides.
Yes.
And the universe and Mother Nature and our bodies are actually more balanced and divinely designed, if you want to put it that way, than we even realize, than most people realize. And so this is one of those things where it's free.
Yeah.
It's free. You can do it tomorrow. You can do it whenever. You don't have to consult anybody. You don't have to go through some major multinational pharmaceutical corporate sort of entity to get your medicine. And I'm not saying that if you are using medicine from one of these companies or whatever that, you shouldn't be doing that. But I'm just saying that here's one of those solutions. Just like herbalism, there were so many times with herbalism, we would talk and it's like this medicine that is already in your backyard, this plant in your backyard is beneficial. But yet most people are going to find the synthetic version of that, at the pharmacy or something like that.
Yeah.
And so real quick, I read a very short article. I have more research to do. Again, we're just dipping our toes, in these golden waters, if you will. And one of the articles that I read, though, said that there are several components in human urine that have been isolated by the pharmaceutical companies and that they know the benefit of urine. And these components have been synthesized, essentially, and now there's synthetic versions on the market, but you get it in your own urine. Kind of like the stem cell sort of thing in a way, a little bit. That you could go through all these crazy channels and whatever methods they have to acquire those stem cells.
And pay lots of money.
But yet it's right here in your urine.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's very, very interesting. So there is stuff to look into like that we'll probably dive into deeper, or I know other people have. But when I came across that article and I was reading, I'm like, that makes sense to me. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and some of the stuff you were speaking of just like, this is free, you produce it, which is one of the reasons why it's kind of, it's not necessarily shadow banned, but it's like, it's not studied very often in the mainstream, scientific community. A lot of the studies that I haven't even come across a lot of studies, but I've come across people who've done their own studies because they've taken it upon themselves. Or like there's a woman out there who, for her final like PhD project, whatever they have to do.
PhD? Really?
Yes. For her PhD, she took it upon herself to do a urine therapy study and had amazing results with it. And it was just one of those things where it was just like, you can't deny these results once you really look at it. And while you were speaking, one of the things that came to mind was one of the things I did hear about with the urine and what it can be used for is something like an ear infection or an ear ailment, whatever's going on with an ear, inflammation, whatever that might be. You can use your own, but I've heard if your baby has inflamed ears and is clearly in pain, that the mother's urine is actually one of the best antidotes for that ear infection. And the other thing that brings me to is something else I learned along the way is that, our bladder and our ability to create urine is one of the first things that's developed while we're in the womb. And now what I just learned is that while we're in our mother's womb, her own like urine is kind of like put into the womb. So we are in the amniotic fluid, and there's also the urine that she's producing. But once we can produce it on our own, it no longer comes from the mother, and it's only from us. And I don't remember at what month that is, but basically that we are in the fluids, our own fluids. We're also in our own urine, and the urine helps our bodies develop. There's also other things from the mother's umbilical cord and nutrients and things that are going to help the body and the skin and all the tissues develop, but the urine itself does as well. And I also came across some information about in China, they were able to regrow a tooth by storing it in urine. I mean, these are the things that are being like shown with urine, is that it is such a deep healer, and that it can heal tissue in such a great way, like kind of almost above anything else that's out there. And so that's kind of been one of the things for me that has really kind of blown my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of mind-blowing things with it.
There really is. And I feel like I kind of want to go through some of the stuff that we've experienced personally.
Yeah, go for it.
So we can kind of bounce off of that. So I have a list of things that, just I've been blown away by, that I've felt almost immediately. As I said, the hormonal stuff, my hormones felt more balanced. So my menstruation was much more balanced, much less painful, and not as exhausting. That was a huge thing I noticed. Then also the second thing that I really noticed was feeling less anxious, feeling more calm, and feeling more centered, feeling more patient, like having the ability to take things with stride a little bit more, which is really huge for me, because that's been something that I've, as you know, have worked on and have had to constantly work on.
I've noticed this as well.
You did, yes.
And I thought it was really interesting that we have another friend, who's been doing this for a little while. Shout out Vanessa.
Yeah.
And she has said, and this is a known thing, that you can literally basically use urine if you have it around, obviously. And she has aged hers, and there's a whole side of it where you can keep some around for a prolonged period of time.
Yes.
But it's really helped her in certain instances get rid of a panic attack, basically, and that this is another known sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because what it seems to do is it basically fills in the gaps for you. So if you have something that's underlying, that like a condition or maybe anything, whatever it would be, anxiety, depression, whatever that is for you, if it's underlying or sometimes it's there, or it's an ailment that has not presented itself yet, but maybe there's something within your body or your psyche or whatever that's going on, your urine holds part of that. So by taking that in, you're actually healing it. It's the like heals like sort of concept in homeopathy of that, like heals like. And so you have that little bit of whatever that anxiety stuff is within you, that's in the urine, but you're taking that in and it's actually working to heal it. So that's another thing that I'm coming across of, like, the more you take in the urine, the more you become like you. It's you. It's like this looping thing that you're doing with it, with yourself, your body's intelligence. Every cell in your body is absorbing that yourself. And like, that's pretty beautiful. Just like we're talking about, just like with the kind of the centeredness and knowing that everything comes from within, basically.
Right.
And that's where the most healing kind of takes place.
Right.
So those things were really wonderful to experience. Deepened sleep. Sleep has never been like that big of an issue for me. I always can usually fall asleep pretty well. I can stay asleep, but the urine therapy really like amplified that. Like, I was noticing, holy moly, I'm like really deeply sleeping now. Improved digestion. I was also beginning to experience feeling like I had to urinate more frequently, or I'd have to like go in shorter bursts, or I'd go to the bathroom because I'd feel like I have to pee, and then it would just be like a little bit, And then I chalked it up to, well, I just turned 40. That's just what happens when you turn 40, And then, dude, that has gone away. It's entirely not a thing anymore. And that to me was a big revelation as well. The food thing, going back to that, feeling like I require less food to feel satisfied now. And that's an interesting one that I've been noticing, as well as the more awareness of what I'm consuming and really actually like really kind of thinking about it like in a bigger way than I normally do.
Right.
So that's been pretty cool. I also did age some of my urine for only about a week, but once I did that, I used it like as a full body rinse, a hair rinse. I drank some of it. And that was the first time, though, that I did have like some slight detox symptoms, which is something that can happen. It's like the healing crisis sort of thing. So it wasn't until I dipped my toes into the aging process, and that usually potentizes the urine. It makes it more alkaline, and it also just can be a lot more healing on a few levels when you're using the aged urine. But there was something else about the aged urine that comes through. I think it has higher negative ion charges. That's something I just recently learned. But anyway, that was when I really started to feel like, okay, I had kind of a headache. I felt a little more kind of like achy. And then I thought, okay, well, it's working. So those were my experiences right off the bat that really, really have helped me to want to keep doing it, basically.
Nice. Yeah, so I should probably go through mine.
If you want to, you don't have to, but...
No, of course, I don't mind.
Okay.
And so I think I've had less sort of noticeable changes at the moment, but I think the ones that I have had were very interesting. One of them being that I pretty much got used to having like morning sniffles.
Oh, yeah.
And I just got used to it. And so once we moved out here, it's a bit of a different climate. It's very wet up here, and it can be colder for a good chunk of the year. All of these different things, and I just chalked it up to something in my environment that, I don't know, my body was trying to somehow process or flush or something. I don't know. I never really looked into it that much because it didn't bother me that much. And so I would wake up and I would have these morning sniffles. I would just blow my nose, and that's pretty much it. It wasn't that big of a deal. But I noticed ever since I started drinking my urine that they kind of just went away to the point where I almost forgot I had them. And so it just slowly but surely, it just isn't a thing anymore. And I just thought about it because we're going over some of the benefits, and I just wonder if it has something to do with that. It probably does. But I can't say for sure, but I thought that was very interesting because I had these sniffles for, I can't say exactly how long. I felt like at least a year or two where that was perpetually just sort of the thing, and it was always very clear too. And now it's not really a thing anymore. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And also, I would say for me, I feel like there's a big psychological, spiritual aspect to it where I'm acknowledging that I'm not what kind of the system wants you to think you are, and that you're not just a random sort of disgusting meat sort of suit or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what we're taught, kind of. And even if it's not deliberately said like that, I think that's always the subliminal.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's always sort of the implication. Man is evil, you're evil. Again, this idea of being born with sin and things like that. And so there has been a major sort of spiritual shift with me, I think, that has coincided with all of this in acknowledging your divinity and kind of being sort of in tune with the idea that your body is a temple. And I feel like ever since I started drinking it, that this sort of idea has really crystallized more. And because we're seeing these benefits online, people's testimonies, and because you're feeling things, and I've noticed things too, I feel as though that has kind of helped sort of emphasize that for me in my life. So I see it for me personally that there actually has been a very ritualistic sort of aspect to it. It feels ritualistic to me. And so that has been a thing for sure. I did experience a detox sort of situation. So I think at the beginning I was drinking quite a bit, probably more than what's necessary or needed.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say too, for people who are just starting out or they want to give it a go, the hardest time is the first time.
Yeah.
That's the most difficult sort of glass to swallow down.
Yeah.
After that, though, I really feel like it's been pretty smooth sailing.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's really not that difficult. It's not even that disgusting. It doesn't taste as bad as it just tastes very different. You've never tasted anything like that before.
Yeah.
Unless you've had pee in your mouth. But to me, that was the worst. The worst was just getting over that first mental hang up with you drinking it. And now it's really interesting because we found that people swish it in their mouth and gargle with it. And so to me, it's amazing that now I'm doing that.
Right.
And it didn't take very long for me to start doing that. And to me now, I kind of see it. I'm like, oh, this is like liquid gold. And so that there's another interesting thing kind of going on there with literally urine being golden in color, golden showers, right? Or
Right.
yellow in color. And just thinking about the sun, the power of the sun, gold, literally gold itself, you know? And so there's a really fascinating sort of correspondence there that I want to learn more about for sure. But my detox symptoms basically came in the form of diarrhea,
Yeah.
which is common. And so not so much in how much I was going, but in that when I would go, it was very runny.
Yeah.
You know, and as we call it, soupy poopy.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's very soupy. And so I was like, okay, I noticed that. And then I'm like, this has to be from the urine therapy. And you actually asked Amanda Vollmer, you know, and she said, oh yeah, that's pretty normal,
Yeah.
actually. And that your body is flushing things. And so all I decided to do is just start drinking less. And literally within a day of me drinking less, that symptom went away. And so everything was regular again.
Right, which I love this story. It's beautiful because it shows you, you know, your body is our bodies are so intelligent that it was giving you that signal like, hey, there's too much. It's too much, you know, too much or whatever. Although there was detoxing to happen, that's fine too. But the fact that all you had to do was reduce and then everything leveled out. So your body knows so many things and can pin us on so many things and ping us in ways. And that is just a testament to that. And I think it's really cool. And yeah, I mean, the other thing too that I'll say is you can start with a really little bit.
Right.
You know, just literally adding, I've heard Amanda Vollmer say this, you know, take an ounce and add it to some juice, add it to a smoothie. You don't even have to like take it right from the tap if you don't want to begin. You know, you can add it into stuff. That's the other thing that some people, you know, do as well. Put it into a salad dressing maybe. It's kind of, you know what I mean? I don't know. I haven't tried that, but there's ways to incorporate it in. You can also just do it topically. Like
Do people do that, by the way? Sorry.
A salad dressing?
Yeah.
I mean, I did hear a woman talk about that she
Wow.
makes like some salad seasoning
Right.
with it. And I was like, whoa, okay, well, I guess that makes sense because it's kind of a tart, like it's got more of a unique umami, salt, sometimes salty, sometimes not flavor. But yeah, you know, you don't have to just, you can do it slowly and incorporate it in different ways. So that's one of the things too that you can think about, or if people are, you know, leery of it or whatever. But one of the things too that we've talked about, that there's like a primordial tradition element to this. And that goes back to this centeredness, the knowing that we produce what we need, all the answers are within. It kind of goes back to this central pole, central axis sort of idea. And also, when you do start looking into urine therapy, you realize that this is an ancient practice. I mean, in India, the numbers I see is that this has been practiced for 5,000 years at least. And we don't even know, like, just like with numbers, you don't really know. But all I know is that all the evidence is there that it has been practiced, and it's a really big thing in the East, particularly in China and India. And in India, it's called shivambu. I think I'm saying that correctly. But it's basically Lord Shiva and the word ambu. And that this translates from Sanskrit into the waters of awareness. Waters of awareness.
I love that, by the way. That is awesome.
Yeah, Shiva Ambu. That's how you say it. Shiva Ambu. So waters of awareness, waters of the body, divine water, holy water is kind of like, if you're looking at it in the Sanskrit tradition, that's what you're going to come across, which I think is really interesting. And the scientific term of urine is blood plasma ultrafiltrate. So, you know, they're basically telling you it's ultra filtered blood plasma. And that is what your urine is it's blood plasma. So it is pure just plasma for your own body. And there's all sorts of beauty regimens, beauty creams that use like horse urine and things like that. You've told me of cultures in, is it Africa, who honor like cow urine and things like that.
Yeah.
I would imagine there's practices like that in India as well, as they hold the cow very sacred. So, I mean, I'm sure you have thoughts on just the central primordial kind of elements of this.
Yeah, well, definitely. The fact that we call it urine, I'm always tracking words that have or your right in there. And it does. It starts with UR,
right.
INE. And so you're in. When I've looked into this, and I track that specifically because I'm such a geek for the northern polar stuff, because of Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. That basically, my understanding is that really goes back to this primordial, original kind of essence. So even earth, right? Phonetically, it sounds the same, earth. So I've even heard that earth was once spelled in some cultures as URTH, not EARTH. So is in so many words. Mercury, Mercurius. There's a lot of words that have in it, and a lot of it goes back to this sort of fundamental kind of principle, this sort of central kind of idea. And so, which is incredibly ancient. And so, to me, that's kind of a curious sort of thing that I just want to look into a little bit more.
Right.
But there's a lot of interesting words that have that or your or whatever right there. And there's a lot of common words, brother, mother, father, these types of words, all right there. And once you start looking for it, you'll notice it all over the place. At least I did. And so that, to me, is kind of a curious sort of connection. Real quick, before I forget, didn't you say that there is I don't think you mentioned it yet, but like a Chinese practice where they would use young child's urine?
Yeah.
And was this for eggs, right?
Yeah, it's they collect, I don't know if they still do it, but there's a documentary, you can find it on YouTube, that goes through this. They collect the urine of young boys. I'm pretty sure it's from boys, and they will use that to boil eggs in. And then they sell the eggs like on throughout the city, and it's always during Easter time.
Oh, interesting.
That's when they do it. And
wasn't there like some like medicinal value to these eggs or no?
Yeah, there's medicinal value, just like there's the medicinal value of the urine.
Right.
And so the egg, and one of the women, they interviewed a woman on the street, and she said basically kind of like, if you believe in it, it works. It's like one of those things like you're believing that this is healing you and it's helping you and this and that. And the more you believe in it, the more benefits you get from it. But this is kind of like an ancient Chinese remedy that is known, and you can get it. Like I said, I don't know if they do it like year round, but I do remember it was during Easter time when that's like the most prominent time where it happens.
I just have to say real quick, so the basic thing that I've been following for a little while now is the symbolic ages, right? The present solar age, preceded by the lunar age, preceded by a primordial northern stellar age, whatever you want to call it. And so to me, what I see is that this earlier age has everything to do with the center. And that as we've kind of proceeded throughout history, the current age, I would say people are off center and that people are unbalanced, right? Now, on a grander sort of cosmic scale, I can see this being for good reason, so that's not sort of beyond me or anything like that, but I can still see it around us.
Right.
So I see that people are unbalanced, uncentered. Rene Guénon, who I've been talking about a lot lately, he says that the big difference between the golden age, the last golden age, isn't an interesting golden age, by the way.
Right.
Coinciding with the primordial age, that the big difference between the last golden age and the current age, where arguably there has been like a fall of man sort of thing, people aren't living up to their full potential in a lot of ways. They're not really living authentic lives, by and large. You kind of have to strip away a lot of things to get to that point in your life, if you're living in the modern world, I would say.
Yes, that's true.
And so he said, though, that the big difference between this last golden age and sort of this current age is literally people's reverence and understanding of the center itself. And the center meaning the center of self, the center of earth, the center of the universe, being pretty much one and the same, actually. They're all reflections of the exact same center, because everything emanates from the center and then returns to the center, which reminds me of this looping sort of urine therapy business, right?
Yep. And
so it's interesting to me that you're saying that further east, urine therapy still has, you know, it's sort of remnants. Like there's still people who are practicing it, and there's probably people you can find over there who know way more about it and might recommend it, you know, as a therapy.
Right.
And these cultures are more overtly polar. They're more overtly primordial in their symbolism, I would say. And so you could just see it, just looking at the artwork in India and like what is around and whatever. The different icons and symbols and things like that. To me, it harkens back. It's more of a reference to this earlier sort of age. The further west you go, the less you see that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking of like the swastika. I'm thinking of the wheel and things like that. Really basic symbols. But it has more. These symbols have more to do with that sort of central sort of idea, you know?
Yeah.
Things revolving around a center and whatnot. So to me, that tracks kind of with all this stuff, how ancient those cultures are, and then the fact that there's still some of this tradition left intact in their symbolism and stuff. So
right.
It just makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense to me too. And that's why, I mean, I think it's really cool that all these connections are being made, and it just further validates everything about it.
And it makes sense too that part of what modern man, the conversation with urine therapy and modernity, it's right there. It's like the same conversation in my opinion, basically. Mm-hmm. But modern man, for various reasons, essentially, once again, has been conditioned to have an aversion of self.
Right.
To have an aversion of their own center. And so that's why certain things that were kind of common and normal, probably way back when, are now icky, you know, and disgusting and whatever. But it's you. So you're saying that you're icky and you're disgusting. And then basically this is a self-devaluation sort of situation.
Yes.
Where you're devaluing, you know, your essence, and you're devaluing, you know, again, kind of like your divinity and stuff. You're saying that, no, I'm not that. That's for just the angels in stories and mythology or whatever, that, you know, you don't have kind of this primordial connection with the universe or whatever. So that to me is just like a huge part of the conversation, because obviously most people who hear this, I mean, your channel's different, I would say. Probably going to be a lot of people who are interested in it or probably have even tried it or whatever. Mm-hmm. But obviously there's going to be clearly people who are not into it.
Yeah.
And what does that say about them?
Right, exactly.
I'm not saying that proves urine therapy, by the way.
Right.
I'm just saying that that's part of the whole entire conversation with all this stuff, I would say.
No, totally. It's not much different than even just the quote unquote truther, you know, community or truther information, and people thinking they're open-minded, and then you bring something up and they're like, what? You know, they can't, whatever. It's like, it's kind of similar, I feel like, in my opinion, with how open-minded you think you really are, and then what will you shut down and what are you not okay with in that sense, you know, and I think that kind of plays a role as well.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's coming to me that I'm thinking about, which is fasting. One of the practices of fasting, but like looping your urine as you're doing that. And I just recently did a 24-hour fast, which was last week, and I looped my urine throughout the 24 hours, and I was not hungry once. And it was the easiest fast I've ever done.
Right.
And so this kind of goes, taking it a step further to like breatharians and stuff. Mm-hmm. This is maybe why people can be breatharians.
Oh.
If they are consuming their urine, I would imagine that that's the thing that maybe is what allows them to actually do it. Just a thought. Because feeling the difference between my most recent fast and fasts in the past. I mean, this was easy breezy. I could have kept going. I decided to just do 24 hours because that's what I decided to do. But, it just was the most easy I've ever had. And I attribute it to having the urine incorporated in it.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
I'll say that this is something that I can't say that it was definitely a urine therapy thing, but I had lower back sort of discomfort.
Oh, yeah.
Especially towards the end of the winter, I would say. And never had this before in my life. And so it was a new sort of thing that I was acknowledging and recognizing. And so I was doing different stretches and yoga poses to kind of remedy it and things like that. And that kind of, again, is another situation where I didn't even realize that I had gone away because it just slowly gone away. But it happened to have gone away while I was introducing urine into, my daily practice.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the exact cause was with that, but it makes me wonder if there's some sort of connection. So those are my two examples, were two things that I was dealing with, not super major, not the end of the world or anything like that, especially compared to what some other people are dealing with, seemingly kind of just disappeared. And, this lined up with me drinking my pee-pee.
Yeah. And what's coming to me is that perhaps you drinking the urine helped you to resolve some sort of underlying conflict that was happening, that was causing the back pain, that it may have not been that it's like the physical, muscle tension was relieved with the urine. It was the emotional connection or the feelings that were associated with the back pain that the urine was able to kind of like fill in those gaps or allow your body or your mind to assimilate somehow.
Right.
Because, I think that that's the thing about this is that it's gentle. It seems like it would be when you think about urine therapy or drinking your own pee. A lot of the reactions are kind of like harsh or, there's an aversion or whatever, but it's been one of the more gentle medicines, gentle healing ways of healing that I've ever come across. And so for me, that's been really cool. And then I had the thought at one point of like, well, urine seems to have a lot of the same healing benefits as DMSO does. So like urine can be used on wounds, it can be used on burns, and it can be used to heal skin quickly, which is all the things that DMSO are used for. So I was like, well, what if you combine DMSO with urine? So I have a DMSO tonic that I use for myself. So it's my scalp and facial tonic. That it's just what I use for my own self. I make it for myself. And I added my aged urine to it this go around. So I put aged urine into it along with everything else that I put into it. Because in my mind, I'm like, there's no way that this could be harmful. Mm-hmm. And if I want this in my body, DMSO, as most people know who understand DMSO, it drives whatever is on your skin or you're putting in with the DMSO, it drives it in deeper. Mm-hmm. So I'm now incorporating it into my facial and scalp treatment. And I think it's great. It seems to be, just as wonderful, if not more wonderful than it already was. Right. So I have a lot of things that I'm thinking about in that realm with DMSO and urine and what that might look like. Right. And I'd love to have another conversation with Amanda Vollmer about that because I'm sure she's got tons of thoughts on it.
Oh, yeah. And she's writing a book about this, right?
She is writing a book currently about urine therapy. Right. So I can't wait till that comes out because that'll be another banger. That's for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Right on. So two things that I want to bring up. One that's more mainstream and just kind of common or whatever. And then the other that's not so much. But athletes. I've heard a number of times now that serious high-performing athletes have been known to drink their urine as well. And this more so comes from the combat sports world. Mm-hmm. So boxers and things like that. And what I've said to you about this before is that these guys don't do something unless it's effective. They don't do something unless it makes sense to. So another classic boxing thing is to be abstinent before a fight.
Ah, that makes sense.
To retain your semen and not have sex before a fight, because it just depletes your energy and you lose focus and all these other things. So that's kind of another example. That's a classic sort of thing. Not all boxers do that, but I think it's like more of an old school sort of thing, and there's something to it, you know? And so they wouldn't do it if it didn't make sense. If it didn't fit in line with winning a belt or something, they're not going to do it. If it wasn't effective, obviously it just doesn't make sense to do it anyway. And it's all about those purses too. It's all about a payday. It's all about winning fights so that, you know, your prize fighter comes home with a big paycheck.
Right.
And so it affects their bottom line is what I'm trying to say. So if drinking urine helps affect their bottom line and produces a better fighter, a more balanced fighter, then they're going to do it. And so to me, that's very interesting that that's part of the thing. And I would love to hear from a coach or something like that, a trainer, about that. So I don't know exactly how pervasive that is, but I've heard it multiple times. I've heard it several times since we've been looking into stuff. So that's another thing. The other thing, I guess, that I wanted to mention is that in the world of the occult and in magic and alchemy and stuff, they are well aware of bodily fluids and their power.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
That is not a mystery in the occult world. Mm-hmm. So whether it's menstrual blood, blood itself, semen, urine, feces even, it's like that stuff, what comes from the human body, has different symbolic value in the world of the occult. And so, so in alchemy, as an example, I've read multiple things, not recently, but forever ago, about using urine for different purposes, using semen for different purposes, you know, things like that, menstrual blood, once again.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's very interesting. So that is kind of, you know, it's not proof that, again, urine therapy works or anything, but it's proof that there are people, there is a sort of history here of mystics and sages and kind of magical type people having the awareness and having the understanding that this stuff is very, very powerful. So again, like semen retention, you know, and not just wasting your seed and things like that, acknowledging the power of your blood. It's like, it's literally your family bloodline, you know.
Yeah.
It's like there's stuff in the blood. It's very, very mysterious. It's very potent and it's very significant, you know, that these things are magical, you know. So that's just kind of another thing that I wanted to bring to the table as well, is just that once again, modern man has more of an idea that these things don't matter.
Yep.
That they're just, it's almost like gas in a car. It's like the lifeblood of a thing, but it's like dead. We have this idea that all of these, like, we're just like a dead sort of like mechanical sort of thing. And that once again, dirty keeps on coming to mind, that we're dirty.
Yeah.
But in actuality, there's a whole sort of world out there where it's not really viewed that way. That it's actually viewed as these fluids are precious and they're sacred, essentially.
No, totally. And those are all great points. And I mean, there's a reason why even the medical industry and all these hospitals and stuff, why they collect bodily fluids and they collect placentas and they collect aborted fetuses, and they turn them into things and they sell them in expensive creams. And I mean, the list goes on and on. And, you know, we're coming close to the hour, so we can kind of maybe go into like final thoughts or, you know, what have you. But one of the main things, and we talked about this today before we started, one of the main things that just keeps coming to me is, wow, I mean, the amount of times where we're seeking outward, whether for something to help heal us. And my first go at things like that are always plants. It's always a plant, and I will always be that way, in that sense of like appreciating and loving plants and herbalism and all of that. That is by far my favorite thing. But in terms of what I'm feeling and learning with urine therapy, I'm like, dude, you might just only need your urine. That's kind of what it feels like when I'll hear people talking about, well, I'm dealing with this, I'm dealing with that. And now the first thing that comes to my mind is drinking your own urine versus, well, there's an herb for that, or you could maybe try this herb, or you could try that herb. And I would never dissuade someone from using herbs or incorporating herbs. But what I'm trying to say is that instead of adding something else external, looking within first and using the urine that you produce as that elixir that you use before you start to add more supplementation or this or that or the other thing. That's kind of like where my mind goes now, of it could be so much more simple than it already is. And that's kind of how I feel recently with all of this stuff and just all the benefits that we've been feeling. And
right.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I'm super grateful that, you were the one that kind of prompted it though, to say, we should just do it.
Yeah.
And then I said, yeah, I've been wanting to do it for years, so let's go.
Right.
So grateful that you were finding your own streams of research with it and kind of came to your own conclusions and then said you wanted to do it too. So
nice.
It works out.
Yeah, definitely. No, there's no reason for us to stop anytime soon.
No.
So that's kind of the conclusion, that we've come to, is there have been more benefits than not. I can only see more benefits coming because of it down the road. Clearly, if that's not the case, or we run into additional information that suggests otherwise, we'll gladly share it with people.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So I'll say my final thought has to do with, there's a couple of tarot cards actually that come to mind. And one of them is the Eight of Swords, and it's the woman who is bound. And she is on the beach and she's blindfolded and there's all of these swords around her.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always think about with that card, because I pulled it the other day, is that the swords immediately around her, that's exactly what she needs to free herself from her sort of situation.
Right.
And so in order to untie herself, in order to cut the rope or cut the blindfold off or whatever, all she needs is a blade. And there's 8 blades right around her, And so to me, it's a thing where it just goes back to the same theme of sometimes the solutions to our problems or our ailments are simpler and much closer than you realize. And that to me is kind of a urine therapy sort of thing that I keep on thinking about. Is like, wow, I've literally just been pissing all of this away my whole entire life.
Yeah. And
here, at almost 40 years of age, I'm realizing that there is more to it than what we first realized and than what we were taught and everything else. And so it's just a beautiful thing to think that there is medicinal healing value and benefits to consuming your urine safely within, a moderate amount and all of that. And so I just think about that. I think about the solutions being closer than what you think. And I think sometimes when it comes to having problems or ailments and things like that, we tend to think of the solution because we want that remedy so bad that we tend to think of that solution as being this like insurmountable mountain that we have to kind of climb or whatever. And I really like Amanda Vollmer's take on it, where we saw her fielding a bunch of questions last year. She did a Q&A at the conference we were at.
Yeah.
People would ask her, hey, my husband's dealing with this, I'm dealing with that, my sister, blah, blah, blah. Some people were asking on their sort of family or friends' behalf and all of that. And Amanda Vollmer, one of the things I really give her credit for is essentially saying that, like, there are a number of solutions to these problems.
Yeah.
Even though you've gone to multiple doctors and they're throwing their hands up in the air and they're saying that there's nothing we can do for you, she has the exact opposite approach, where there's a number of things you could be doing.
Yes.
And that to me seems more accurate than not, actually.
Yeah.
Not that there's a scarcity of things out there, but there's actually an abundance of things out there. And urine therapy just seems to fit in line with that abundance sort of perspective.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much the last thing I want to say, but kind of just variations on the same theme that we've been discussing already, but it really does seem like this is one of those things for sure.
Yeah, it truly is. I think I felt the same way, and we've talked about this of just like, oh my God, this whole time,
Right.
kind of feeling like this whole time I've been walking around producing this, and will produce it till the day I die.
Right.
And it is the thing that we all need the most.
Right.
Yeah, that's been how I've felt too. So
Nice.
pretty cool. I'm glad we sat down and talked about this one.
Yeah, definitely.
And, if you guys liked this conversation, thanks for hanging out and sticking around. Make sure you come back to the Healing Home next week, because I'm going to be interviewing Megan McDonald, and we're going to talk more about urine therapy, all her experience, how she helps coach people in using urine therapy, and her practice, which is up, I believe, in the Alberta, Canada section of the world. And so come back and we'll talk more urine therapy then. But until next time, thank you all so very much for hanging out, and take care out there.